Hello everybody, how are we doing? I thought I would do a video for the rogue feedback for Pantheon. I've been playing the current season, and I thought rather than typing out big long words on the Discord or on the forum, I thought I'd do a video and just it's a little bit easier sometimes to talk about this sort of stuff. So just for context, I've been playing since December. We did a December test, we did 2 in December, January, February, and then obviously we got into the seasons, which has been awesome. I've been running a rogue predominantly. That's been my main. I've had a few ventures into the alts as well, but they got kind of tapped out at about 13, 14, level 13, 14. The rogue is now 32 and has... we killed Agonok, so he's got an Agonok flang. We've got Bloodfang in his offhand. They're the two piercing daggers that I tend to run with DPS. And in terms of stats, I've veered towards dexterity. So my dex is, I think it's maxed out at 69 at the moment. Buffed dexterity at 69. So that pushes my crit chance up to about 50% crit chance. I could go strength, which is one of the interesting things about the game as well. There's many different ways you can take all the stats, which is really interesting, and I do like that. But yeah, rather than have a little bit of ambiguity on Discord through messages and on the forum, I thought I'd have a little bit more specificity doing it on a video like this. So generally, I think we're just going to very quickly just go through general thoughts on the class. I think the class is one of the most fleshed out classes in the game, I think. You like how the abilities are all kind of brought in really slowly. They teach you all the resources, the resource management that you have as a class. So you get Blackjack Kick really early, so you can learn about opportunity. And then next level you get Bloodletter, so you can do a little bit more damage and then learn how the DPS works and things, the damage over time. And then you slowly get things in like the Shadow Walk, then you get Sinister Strikes, and then you get Backstab, etc, etc, etc. So they drop in, Vigil Realms have dropped in all the abilities as a rogue nice and slowly. It's not all kind of thrown at you all at once, which I think is really important. I think if abilities are just thrown at you all at once, you have too many in there and you don't know how they kind of all tie together. So I think the rogue in general, I think, is one of the most fleshed out classes. Now, it's not the most balanced, and it's not in the strongest position in terms of its main role within the game, but we'll kind of get to that later. So the rogue is a DPS class. That's the sort of role in the game that it has. It can also flex into a little bit of crowd control, which is very cool as a class premise sort of thing, and I think the fact that we do have a limited action set in the game where you're only able to have 8 abilities up and then the 6 like utilities as well, I think that's a really interesting way of managing that flex across all the classes as well. So for instance, a Dire Lord could maybe flex into the DPS realm as well, but having to pick and choose what abilities go in your limited action set, I think gives you a little bit of control over how strong of a flex that you are able to give a class. So, for instance, a rogue could flex quite strongly into crowd control, but for all the things that you would need on your ability bar to be able to crowd control really well, you would be giving up an awful lot of DPS to an extent where a lot of the time you wouldn't be doing any damage at all. And when I say really well, sometimes if everything goes well and you're a really good player and you've got it all kind of nailed down, you can sometimes crowd control 3 mobs, or so 3 adds. So you can pull 4 and you can sort of almost lock down 3, and then while the rest of the group kill 1 mob. So that's with the use of 2 traps, so 2 spring wire traps. So you've got the mobs rooted, and then you've got the mezzes as well. So you can kind of chain mez and try and keep 1 mezzed. You've got a 2-second cooldown where the mob is free, but if you can kind of keep it away, and then you can lock the other 2 down with some roots. So you can sort of control 3. But that is with no other damage or DPS or anything. That's one of the things that's quite interesting about the game. If you're trying to interrupt things, you end up looking and saving because you don't want your interrupt, for instance, to be on cooldown. So you end up watching the combat a little bit more and paying attention to when he's going to be casting rather than throwing out your DPS because you don't want it to be in cooldown when he's casting that one spell, like the Shriek that we've got up behind us. You don't want him to life tap. So you have to be watching when he's about to life tap. So that's when you don't tend to be doing any of your abilities. It's a little bit the same when you're purely trying to crowd control. However, it is quite nice to be able to just have a couple of those abilities in there, and I do tend to have Spring Riot Trap and a Mez on my bar most of the time, so that takes up one slot. Really, really good. However, the flex, the ability to flex into a role shouldn't pull away from the major role of any class really, and the rogue class is DPS. So the DPS I think does struggle a little bit now. That tends to be down to the abilities. It tends to be, I don't quite know why we had. The gear is an interesting one. So my daggers went from the crude dagger that you start with. I then got a rusted dagger from a skeleton. I was like, well, the skeletons are dropping better weapons, so I'll hit those and farm those a little bit to try and get better daggers. So I got those. Then I made some Asherium daggers, which I think went up to damage 6. Then I found was it the Diamond Head Viper Fang? I think that is then damage 7. I then found the Chimera Fang, which is damage 10, I think it was at the time. Then there was a Black Iron Dirk, which I got. And then obviously I got Blood Fang, and then I got Aganox Fang. Now Aganox Fang started off at being damage 30. So that's gone from damage, I think it starts at damage 4, and then the rusted one was damage 5, the Asherium was damage 6, the Diamond Head was damage 7, and then I went to damage 10. I think I then went to 11. I think the Dirk is 11, and then Bloodfang I believe is 14, and then you have a massive jump to damage 30 for the Aganox Blade. That Aganox Fang, which is cool. I'm a little bit curious how that sort of. I mean, so the Fang has now been dropped down to damage 26, which is still insane, a really really insane bump. However, Aganox is supposed to be a little bit more of a kind of a world raid boss, which is fine. So there's not going to be many of those around, many of those weapons around. So I think the build-up of that weapon ability is sort of okay, and then you end up with the Aganox Fang at the top end. However, the impact of that weapon damage on my actual DPS didn't seem to have that much of an effect, or doesn't seem to have that much of an effect a lot of the time. You get spikes, and like I said earlier, I am heavily into dexterity, so I like my crits. That's just the way that I've decided at the moment in this game to take my DPS. I want to crit more, and I think if I crit more, then I'll be doubling my damage more often. And for me, in my head, I haven't got a damage meter, I haven't got a DPS meter. We have had a little bit of a one running in certain areas on my guild in the Champions Club, but not to an extent where I'm able to properly tie down some DPS and try different loadouts and also different gear as well. It would be really interesting to see what the damage would be like at a strength build, for instance, rather than a dexterity build, and you push your attack power rather than your dexterity and crit chance. I think that's probably one of the side effects of the game being in a test environment, and we predominantly are in a slightly restricted time scale, so you sort of kind of have to rush, not really rush, but you have a limited time in which to try things out. And obviously we're going to get a reset soon, which is going to be really really good, and we're going to get start again. I am going to re-roll a rogue as well, which would be great. But I think the DPS is at a interesting point. I do like how all our abilities generally are based around weapon damage. So, for instance, Backstab does 250% weapon damage, and I think that's a better way of doing it than, for instance, the Ranger does. I think one of the abilities on the Ranger does medium damage, and then you get a higher level one and it does high damage. And I think it's probably better to tie that to weapon damage. I think that's a little bit more scalable as well. Probably have a little bit more control over that. One of the things that doesn't scale very well, and we'll get to that when we start talking about the abilities a little bit. One of the things that doesn't scale very well are things like the traps. So the explosive trap is just a complete waste of time, which is a shame. And yeah, the damage I think could be tweaked in the way that we deliver our damage. Whether we want to be consistent, whether we can spike. I try and spike as much as I can because I like my crits. But like I say, maybe we could have a strength build that keeps you a little bit more consistent. Anyway, what I wanted to do was go through all the abilities. So I'm going to go through all of them as much as we can. So we got them here. We're going to go through as many of these as we can and just kind of give a little bit of feedback on these. Now, the first two ones, which are traits, which are really, really cool. So you've got the subtle trait and you've got the nimble trait. You get these at level 10 and level 20, respectively, I believe. And they are an innate passive, so you innately get this. So you innately increase your dodge rating by 10, which is awesome. Very, very cool, very, very useful. And then also you reduce your threat generation by 5% as well. These are very difficult to know whether they are working or not. We haven't got any way of finding out, so we've just got to kind of trust on that. The dodge rating, I always think it would be quite interesting to see these, not really as a buff up at the top, to almost remind us, but if it could be tied into some sort of... your nimble trait has dodged the attack, some sort of thing. So if you have dodged the attack and the algorithm or the calculation has worked out that it's dodged you have dodged the attack by that 10 rating increase, then maybe it could say that in the combat log. That would be quite cool. I don't really know what you do with a subtle one. The mob doesn't turn around with you at this time because your threat generation has been reduced by your subtle. Yeah, that's not really going to work. One thing I will say is that I'm quite not really reserved, but like reducing your threat generation by 5%. I don't know how the threat generation and stuff is worked. I still think that's kind of up in the air and it's not quite in the right place. I know Dire Lords talk a lot about struggling with their threat generation and things. So I think if that's ever going to get a revamp and you almost want to have a scale and make sure that everything, like write down the scale of where you want everything to sit. And then once you've had that threat generation reduced, whether 5% is enough or not, because it's like 5% might not bring you down. If you're, for instance, if you're duoing with a Dire Lord and you're trying to, you're doing maximum DPS from the Dire Lord, maximum DPS from the Rogue. If you're gaining threat against the Dire Lord, but reducing it by 5% wouldn't reduce it past the level of threat that they're gaining or anything like that, then the 5% isn't in. It's not being relevant, if that makes sense. So I'm sure Visual Realms have that all under control in terms of threat generation and where we sit on the threat table, and whether 5% is enough or not. But we will see. Okay, so I'm not putting in all of the techniques. I'm just kind of picking out some of them. So these ones are the combat techniques which you learn as you level your combat skills. So if you're using a mace or a hammer and your blunt technique goes up, then you will at some point at like blunt 50, blunt skill 50, then you will learn this technique, or blunt skill 20 or whatever it is. I think this one's quite an early one. And this is one of the only ways that we can get disorientate. So we can make a disorientated state on the mob, and then a lot of the other classes. So the monks, I believe, are really, really good for this. So if we do have a blunt weapon in our main hand, which will drop our DPS, but then it allows you to synchronize and sync in with things like monks, because then they can stun off the disorientated state, which is obviously really, really useful. It has got a dex modifier, which is great because we like dex being rogues. So yeah, this one's fine. A lot of these kind of blunt techniques you won't see used purely because of the weapon options which are out there. There aren't any hammers which are particularly good, useful for a rogue. If there was a damage 30 hammer, then maybe you would kind of play around with some more of these blunt techniques, because there are plenty of them, and I think one of them is 150% as well, which would be quite cool. It's almost like the backstab. It might be waylay actually. I think it's waylay. Waylay is slashing and blunt, I believe, but don't quote me on that. We'll get to that later. So I think the reason why these ones haven't been used is literally just because we're in a testing state and we don't have gear yet for everything. So that's fair enough. This one, however, Shiv, I am going to be a big proponent of asking Visual Realms to change this skill. So this is a piercing technique that everybody has. Everybody has access to this. You start as a wizard and you will be shiving with a dagger or a spear or something. So this, I think, needs to change the damage modifiers. It needs to change the damage modifiers. This needs to kind of be shifted over somewhere, because I did a DPS check in the middle of the season. Now, granted, this was just before we got the 250% damage on the backstab. I was using the unmastered version because that was the version that was what was in game. So I wanted to test the backstab version which was in game. So I removed it from my bar, put the new one on. It was 150%. So I was doing 150% damage. However, backstab was only on strength. And Shiv, I think was, well, I don't think, I know, it was over 100 stabs. It did 1,000 less damage. I believe it did 11,000 damage over 100 stabs, and backstab did 12,000 damage over 100 stabs. Now this, technically, this has a faster cooldown, so you can spam this. Backstab has an 8-second cooldown, so I really, really want this to be moved to a different damage modifier so that this isn't sneaking in on backstab. And also, I think backstab should be changed a little bit, so we'll get to that later. However, I do think this needs to be shifted a little bit. I think it should be either strength or stick it on some agility. Just throw an agility damage modifier on there or something, just something out of the left field, just to bring this... I don't want to say bring it down, but bring the damage down compared to some of the abilities that the rogue should have. This is a general technique. It's a general piercing technique that every class has, and I think it's competing for a long time. I didn't even run backstab on my bar because this was just out damaging it, and I would just hit it as soon as it came up, sit it in a rotation. It was always up. It would always do good damage. Anyway. So Shiv, really, really good. I just think it needs to be pulled down in terms of what it's doing for all the classes, including the rogue. So heavy slash. So again, this is a slashing technique. This is quite interesting when you've got the slashing weapons on. It does bonus damage when you're behind. This is where you're getting a little bit more of the strength bonus. If you want to run a slashing build, then you want to be a little bit more prominent in your strength. I was running a piercing build because obviously I had a few more daggers. When we get a little bit more weapons and drops in the game, then maybe we can play around a little bit more with our gear and see if we can go a little bit more strength orientated. But until then, these ones are all very, very interesting. These are just like the general combat techniques. In the same with this one. So this is another way. I've not actually found what the weakened state is for. These are... The weakened state has got to be... So the limited action set, I'm a massive fan of the limited action set. I think the limited action set is great. The issue is that everything has to be able to compete. Now, this only deals 50% weapon damage. It's a slashing technique. I think the highest slashing weapon that I saw that was usable by a rogue was maybe 32. So you're doing 32, so you're doing 50% weapon damage, but you cause a weakened state. Now this could combine in with something else, with another class that makes use of the weakened state. I haven't found that. We need to do a little bit more kind of talking in groups about finding weakened states and getting them linked up. But ultimately it's not really doing the damage to then make use of the weakened state unless the weakened state is really beneficial for one of the other classes. I don't think this would ever kind of end up being on your bar, regardless of whether you're decided to use a slashing or a piercing. If you use a slashing, I don't even think this would make it on. And the similar with this one. Now, this one causes a light bleed. Now, the light bleed is a similar thing to Bloodletter as well. So Bloodletter also causes a light bleed. This one causes a light bleed for 30 seconds. Dire Lords can tap into the light bleed. So if you are kind of grouping with a Dire Lord and you are running slashing, so you have got a sword, this is really interesting for that, to be able to kind of help out the Dire Lord and give them more healing. Therefore, the healer in the group doesn't have to heal them as much. So this is a really useful one. But again, we're struggling at the moment for actual drops which make slashing useful for a rogue. I think we have the Windblade is pretty much my only slashing weapon that I've got, that I've been using. Twin Fangs, also piercing technique. Now these are great. Now I believe this one pops up on your bar quite quickly, quite early on when you're doing your piercing and you level up. I think it might be somewhere around the 40-50 mark. I'm not entirely sure, but this is a great way of getting additional DPS through dot DPS, so damage over time. DPS. It doesn't do any damage initially, so it's 25%, but it does poison the target. So this one is agility. So the fact that Shiv is all dexterity, this one has got a damage modifier of agility and constitution. So it's not like Visual Realms can't throw in like random damage modifiers. So I do think Shiv should be taken around. Twin Fangs is brilliant. I love it. It's fantastic. It is usually on my bar. I will usually trigger it alongside Bloodletter, get a couple of dots going in the background just to kind of push my DPS up a little bit. Also if mobs are running, then you try to put this one on along with Bloodletter just as they are about to start running, just to keep the DPS up as they are running off as well. So very, very cool. And then Skewer as well. I'm gonna fast forward a few more of these kind of piercing techniques. Although Skewer bypassing 15% of the target's armor class, I'm not sure whether these are in game at the moment, whether armor class actually does impact damage quite as much. Yeah, this one, I dropped this one in response to backstab as well. So I had this and Shiv, and because this one has a faster cooldown as well, and this one had the higher dex damage modifier as well. It didn't perform too well, so it did come back out of my little kind of rotation, but it was in for a while, and I was using this along with is it Piercing Strike, the other one that lowers AC. So you can lower AC with that. You can lower AC with our Corrosive Brew, and then you can use this one as well that gets past another 15% of the armor class. So technically, you're kind of getting past nearly 50% of the target's armor class using those three combinations. Yeah, ultimately this one didn't hit particularly consistently in the high numbers. But yeah, it's a 5-second cooldown along with Shiv. It's just very, very easy to kind of go through. And there's the Pierce armor. So this one is reducing another armor by 15% for a minute, which is great. This is really, really useful if you want to just kind of up the group's DPS in general. If you want to be a team player, a group player, you can throw this one in with Corrosive Brew and really help out. Okay, vulnerable state. Not found out what the vulnerable state is particularly used for. I think the vulnerable state is a little tornado icon, and I believe that's also used for the monks. I think a lot more conversations need to be had in groups. If you're ever in a Discord group, just kind of ask if any of the other classes can make use of states, because the rogues can put the mobs in a lot of different states, and if they can do that, it's probably and usually worth taking up one of your spaces on your limited action set to drop in one of these techniques to get that state needed. Okay, so Master Trap Maker, amazing skill, really, really good. It allows you to kind of properly get some traps down, properly control how many mobs are going to be coming in. When we were trying to break into the Mouth of Madness, when the Mouth of Madness first dropped, I was throwing out 4 traps at a time. I was throwing out a couple of root traps, a couple of stun traps, just to give when we were pulling the spiders out, just to give the group some time to pick their targets, to give their enchanters a little bit of time to pick and then mez without getting hit, allowing the tanks to pick a target out that they want to target and pull. Master Trap Maker, amazing. You do get it quite late. Master Trap Maker you get at level 18, so you do get it quite late. But being able to have 4 out, you've learnt. I think you've got 3 traps up to that point, so you've learnt how to be using the traps, and then obviously it drops in at level 18. Very, very cool. Like it. Now, this is one of the only ways that we can stun a target. We have 2 ways that we can stun, and this is one of the ways. This is one of the situations where you need to ask your group if anybody can do disorientate, because if you can, for instance, on the shrieks, if you can use a hammer and then they can disorientate the shriek, you can then stun it when it starts live tapping. Again, it's only got a 5-second cooldown, which is great, and it's instant cast along with a lot of the other stuns that we have. Well, the other stun that we have. So it is useful. There are a lot of these kind of interesting things. Again, I have a mace that I got from Hangor, which I use if I ever kind of want to play around with these and just see if it makes a difference, compared to just like burning it down or using smoke trick or something to stun the mob instead. But yeah, I've not actually found anybody who can do a disorientate, and then we can combine it with this. But it would be really, really interesting to be able to kind of do that out. Now, Blackjack Kick. So this is where the kind of the class abilities really start. So from here, from Blackjack Kick, from this part of the video onwards, sort of thing. So Blackjack Kick. One of the things that the rogue does really well, and I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, is it slowly brings in all these different resources which you are able to kind of generate, all the different resources which you are then able to use and manage as you go into the game. So this one gives you 1 opportunity if you damage the mob, and it gives you 2 if you do it from the side or the rear. Now, as soon as I read this, I was like, okay, I was out soloing. So if I start from the back of the mob and I open with Blackjack Kick, I'm going to get 2 opportunity, and that's going to help me down the line, because the next level you then learn, I think it's the next one up, you then learn Bloodletter. So Bloodletter costs you 1 opportunity, which you've just earned from doing Blackjack Kick, and you then cause more damage, and then they bleed as well. So when they're running away, the damage is ticking over onto them, particularly back at the beginning of the tests when the mobs would run away really, really quick. You would always try and get Bloodletter on them. So one of the things the rogue does really well is bring all the kind of abilities and skills into the game very, very slowly to allow you to figure out and realize how they all kind of work together. Resource control and resource management. So this is how you get your opportunity. This is what you're going to then use it for. So it's really, really good. And then obviously the next level, you then get Shadow Walk, which this is, again, it was as soon as the mastery got dropped, I dropped this from the bar, from the utility bar, and it's now a stance in itself. So it would be really, really cool to see if we do get any other stances. But this is a stance in itself, which is great. Frees up a slot in the utility bar as well. So you generate 1 opportunity and 250 readiness every 2 seconds, and your movement speed is reduced by 20%. Now, I have found some bags which increase your movement speed to sort of counteract this a little bit, which is great. But generating opportunity and 250 readiness every 2 seconds. I believe when the mastery was in there, it was every 1 second, so you did get it a little bit quicker. Now, one of the things that I tend to like to do is when the mob is being pulled in, I'm already in stealth, I'm already in max opportunity and max readiness because I've been in stealth for 5, 6, 7 seconds while we've been moving to the next mob or while we're finding the next mob. As the mob is coming in, I will hit Sinister Strikes. So that buff is then going, I believe it lasts for 12 seconds. And then through that next 12 seconds, I'm then gaining my opportunity again. So I need 4 more seconds. I need 8 more seconds to get 4 more opportunity. And then I've got 4 seconds left on my Sinister Strike. So I'll then open with Backstab. Use 2 of my opportunities for Bloodletter and anything else that needs it, and then top the opportunity back up with Blackjack Kick, and then just before Sinister Strikes runs out, you can then go in with an extra technique, just so that you can kind of max out on the Sinister Strikes. So technically, you then start the fight with near full readiness, because you've got the hits in as well, near full readiness and 4 opportunity as well. So you've then got the resources which you're then able to use, which is why I like opportunism as well, because you can then turn your opportunity which you've earned at the beginning of the fight into readiness that you can then use for more backstabs and things, which is really, really good. So Shadow Walk is amazing. I don't particularly see the tweak. I don't notice it too much. So it used to be every 1 second. And also it would reduce your movement speed a little bit less, which I do notice, but not so much. But yeah, Shadow Walk is amazing. It's fantastic. Now, I do think that if you attack out of Shadow Walk, it should have a little bit more synergies with some of the other skills. Now, the iconic rogue skill is Backstab. Now, Backstab, if I can just go and find Backstab. So Sinister Strikes is this one here. 15% opportunity, 15% opportunity per, 15% damage per opportunity used, which is fine. And then you can get 2 techniques in. So if you Backstab, then it won't drop you out of Shadow Walk, and then you can Shiv, for instance, and then that will be your 2 to 60% higher damage. Now, I don't know whether this is bugged or not, because I'm getting very fed up with using it in the middle of the fight. So sometimes a fight will last, well, it will be 20 seconds, because I tend to do this before the mob is pulled. So if the fight lasts more than 20 seconds, which a lot of fights do, then I will usually top up my opportunity, stick in another Blackjack Kick, get it back up to 4, hit Sinister Strikes again, so get another 60% bonus damage. I'm not in Shadow Walk at the time, so I only get 1 attack, but then I hit Backstab again. Now, hitting Backstab after I've hit Sinister Strikes, my Sinister Strikes should be giving 60% more damage. So, backstabbing for, and this has happened, backstabbing for 69 with a damage 24 dagger with maximum 60% Sinister Strikes sounds wrong. So I don't know what's happened there. So 60% damage over 69. That meant that the Backstab would have hit. If I hadn't hit Sinister Strikes, it would have hit for about 28. That's wrong. So I don't know what's happening there. But yeah. I don't think this is particularly working. I don't think it's working particularly well. Now, one of the things that I think it should do, if we just very, very quickly go to Backstab, I think Backstab, and I don't think this would be silly at all, because you'd have to manage your threat as well. I think Backstab should automatically crit if you hit it from Shadow Walk. So if you are already stealthed, if you hit Backstab, you should automatically crit. And then that also gives you the ability, and we'll come to Smoke Trick later as well, or Flash Bomb, I forget which one it is. It also gives you the ability to drop aggro in the middle of the fight, go back into Shadow Walk, and then come back out of Shadow Walk and do even more, and do another kind of spike of damage. So I think I think there should be a little bit more synergies around Shadow Walk for a lot of the rogue abilities, if that makes sense. So, where are we? Let's go back to Springwire Trap. So, Sinister Strike's got Springwire Trap. Let's get back to these ones. So, Springwire Trap, amazing, absolutely amazing. It requires stealth. I know the Ranger one doesn't. I don't care. It's amazing. I can have 2 of these ready. I will always have this one on my bar. This is one of those abilities that allows you to flex just a little bit for the benefit of the group. Now, the group that I've got here in the background, we're killing a Shriek. Now, the group that we've got here, I think we're all level 31, 32s at the time. We could quite happily take 3 Shrieks. We could off-tank 1, and then Papa John's, who was the Paladin, could quite happily tank 2. And we could pick out 1 and kill 1. Now, that's all well and good. However, what I could do when we accidentally pulled 3 is that I could root 1, and then I could root another one as well after I've mezzed it, and then we can just burn 1 down, and then burn a second one down once the root is broken, and it just makes the group easier, and it's not as if it's not like we can't do it if we do accidentally pull 3. We just off tank and tank 2. That's fine. But it just makes the group easier, and it makes you feel good as well. It makes you feel useful as a rogue to be able to kind of flex and do these things. So Springwire Trap is absolutely amazing. I love it. I don't think it needs to be changed at all. The one thing I would recommend would be, and there's a few of these abilities, when we're doing the targeting window, please, 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 once we have clicked into placing that target window, and I believe this is going to happen for a few of the other classes as well. I think I heard Jopper talk about a aimed arrow for the Ranger and also an aimed nuke for the Wizard. So when we're getting these aimed spaces, please turn off the target click, so the target cursor. The amount of times when I've had to drop caltrops to stop mobs running away, and we've been fighting 3 mobs and 2 of them are mezzed, and I've clicked to place the caltrops and it's changed my target window. So I've then targeted one of the mez mobs, and rogues attack like absolutely nobody's business. So as soon as you click to change the mob, you would just instantly stab it and wake it up from the mez. So when we're placing traps, when we're placing caltrops, when we are shadow stepping, anything like that that brings up that little target window, it needs to cancel out the target click to enable you to kind of click on mobs and click on targets. And a few times as well when you have kind of clicked it to bring up that target thing, and then you've gone down and you tried to place a trap in front of some mobs that are running in, you can accidentally click the mob and then it doesn't place it quickly enough, and the mob's gone, and then the trap goes down later. So yeah, if you could do that, Visual Realms, that would be amazing. All the rogues in the world would thank you for that. Please, 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 when we're placing traps, caltrops, shadow step, anything like that, allow us to just turn off that target click. I'm sure there's an easy way of doing that, or hopefully there is. Okay, so Umbral Edge. Now, this is an interesting one because this is competing. This is competing on the ability bar on our limited action set with a lot of other debuffs. Now, Corrosive Brew is fantastic. There's a few other things in here which are really, really good. Umbral Edge, I've never really used. Reducing its accuracy by 10%. So 1 hit in 10, it might miss. Maybe. We tend to be fighting red mobs because that's where the XP tends to be the best. Like red, orange, yellow at least. If you're fighting kind of blues and light blues, it's more that if you're doing those, you tend to be doing them for loot, or you're doing them for XP at such a pace you are pulling about 5 mobs in at a time, and you don't care how often they hit you because they just don't kill you. So reducing a mob's accuracy by 10% doesn't ever seem to make an impact, and we've tried this a few times. It doesn't seem to stack, by the way, as well. So we've tried it with 2 rogues. It doesn't seem to stack. When one of the Umbral Edge icons is blinking, if I cast it again, so if one of my rogue friends has cast it and it's wearing off, if I cast it, it doesn't overwrite it. So it just blocks it straight out, so it doesn't stack. So it just reduces accuracy time by 10%. I don't think that's good enough to warrant a place on a limited action set bar, because it's competing against stuff which does actually have an impact. For instance, like Corrosive Brew. Corrosive Brew is absolutely fantastic. Even Pierce Armor would be better than this, and I think Pierce Armor does more damage as well. I think Pierce Armor is 100% damage, whereas this one's 50%. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't want to suggest that it goes up to 20% accuracy or something like that. I just think it needs a little bit of attention, because something needs a little bit of something to compete for a spot on the bar. Even if you are running a blunt weapon, even if you kind of want to shift your loadout and you want to run a blunt weapon so that you can stun somebody if they're being disorientated and things, that's still a valid route to build your action set around. Whereas this, it just never gets in there, and unfortunately there are a few of those for the rogues. And this is one of them. Explosive Trap. It does 25 damage all the time. Doesn't matter what level you are, it does 25 damage. We joked a lot. We had 3 rogues, and we would all throw down explosive traps and say, well, there we go, there's 75 damage. You won't be able to kill this mob without us, because we've just done 75 damage at the beginning of the fight. Now, I don't know how this is going to scale. I think this is one of those issues, along with the Ranger, where you do medium damage with an ability, and then you do high damage with an ability. When you get higher level, you get a new version of that ability that does high damage, and it's not based around weapon damage, which I really like that route, because your weapon damage is obviously going to scale as you level, because you're going to get better weapons. I don't know what you're going to do with this. I don't know how you can scale this per level. I'm sure there's a way. I'm sure there's a way. But if you could, that would be amazing. It shouldn't be hitting for 25. I think 100 would be fine at my level. Like I tend to be, but then even then, you're placing it and you're doing 100 damage. So generally, let's get to this bit. Generally, as a rogue, I'm not going in as soon as the mob is pulled. Generally, I'm staying stealthed. The mob is pulled in. I'm assessing what's happening. If there's an ad, then I can root or mez or some sort of crowd control an ad. If there isn't an ad, then I need to let the tank get a little bit of aggro. I don't want to go straight in and just go bang, 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 bang and throw out a load of damage. So Explosive Trap, you don't... For the sake of 25 damage, even for the sake of 100 damage, I don't know why you would have an Explosive Trap down. I can't think of a single situation where you would do it. Maybe when the mob is running away, but then 25 damage when the mob's running away, you're chasing it, and it's already snared because you've got caltrops down. You're going to be backstabbing it because it's running away. I don't know where Explosive Trap sits. It's cool. I think it needs to be in the game because it's an explosive trap. Maybe it should do something else. Maybe it should set them on fire. Actually, maybe it should just set them on fire. So there we go. Visual Realms, you can have that one for free. This one, so it needs to set them on fire, and it can give them a state. It can give them a state for 30 seconds. So it deals fire damage. So it can deal 50 damage or 25 damage or whatever. Scale it up to 50, 75 damage at level 30. It can set them on fire. So you get a little bit of a damage over time on them. Which means that you're not going to be able to use it in a group where you're mezzing mobs. So it's going to be a single pull trap idea. You're already going to be stealthed, so that's fine. and then it's going to it can trigger a state in the mob. So it can trigger a disorientate or a weakened or some sort of state in the mob. But I think that's the way that you would fix, in inverted commas, explosive trap. But yeah, it is utterly useless beyond that, unfortunately, because it is cool. Like everybody likes explosive traps, and it's really, really nice to kind of see it like poof and explode. I initially thought it was an AoE. I thought that if I put it down when we're pulling in, so I used it in the Mouth of Madness for the Orphan Harvesters when they spawned all their little pets, and I put a trap down roughly where all the tiny spiders were going to be spawned. But it's not an AoE; it just kills one. So it just kills one of the spiders and doesn't even kill it because it only does 25 damage. So yeah, if maybe it should be an AoE as well. There we go. So it needs to be an AoE that causes fire damage on every mob that is in that area, does a damage dot on them, and then causes a state. I don't know what state. I'll leave that to Visual Realms to choose a state. There we go. Right, let's move on. Backstab. Yes. So damage modifiers. Push the damage modifier of dexterity up, please. I want to be hitting backstab. This is our iconic damage. It's our iconic skill. It's our class iconic thing that we've done. It's the blue ribbon ability that rogues have always been able to do. Yes, there is waylay, I think. There we go. So waylay is a similar thing. So this is the one that can use slashing or a blunt weapon. These attribute bonuses need to be different between the two, because if you are using slashing weapons or blunt weapons, blunt should be more strength. Slashing weapons should probably be more strength as well. So I think this one, if you were to do, I don't want to say 80% dex, but if you were to do 80% dex on backstab and 40% strength, then you could flip that on waylay and do 80% strength and 40% dex. So I think that needs to be a damage modifier difference as well between these two. But deals 250% weapon damage. I think this needs to have a line underneath it that says will always crit coming out of Shadow Walk. And that also means, because it's got a 10-second cooldown, so you could be very, very quick with Sinister Strikes. If you hit Sinister Strikes and then backstab, you would still stay in stealth for you to then come out of stealth and hit backstab again. You could then hit backstab again before you came out of stealth. So you could get 2 backstabs if you wanted to that were fully Sinister Striked, 60% bonus damage. Is 250% weapon damage enough? Probably is. I think the damage modifier of Dex going up, I think, would help. I think yes. So I just think that. I think if it could crit, guaranteed crit, because there's a lot of abilities that we have that have a chance of doing something. Gives you a chance of stunning the mob. We'll get to ambidextrous, but yeah, I think this one should be higher dex damage modifier, and I think it should always crit coming out of Shadow Walk. Whether you do that the same for waylay, you could make this one different because it's a blunt weapon, like always crits coming out of coming out of Shadow Walk. Maybe with this one, always stuns coming out of Shadow Walk or something. Stuns the mob for 5 seconds coming out of Shadow Walk to allow you to bang 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 and do a couple of extra bonus hits in. But I think you could show some variety and some difference between these two abilities, because these are the 2 high damage abilities that we have, depending on whether we use a piercing weapon or a blunt slashing weapon. So switch the attributes around: 80% dex, 40% strength, and then 80% strength, 40% dex, and allow it to crit automatically, guaranteed, coming out of that. Now, Toxin Craft. Now, this has got a similar issue to the Explosive Trap in that it doesn't scale. So, at the level you get it at... where is it? You get it at level 9? Is that right? Nope, you get it at level 8. So you get it at level 8 alongside Backstab, which is great. So, at level 8, you've been brought in to backstab, and you've got toxins. Now, please, 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 can we have some more toxins? This is amazing. It's brilliant. We'd love more and more toxins. Can we have a snare toxin? That would be fantastic. I know we've got caltrops. Can we have a snare toxin? Can we have, I don't know, a fire toxin for those mobs which are resistant to poison, for instance, or chemical damage, whatever. Have a fire toxin. Just throw more toxins at us. We love it. It's fantastic. However, can there be some sort of coding which allows this to level, that allows this to expand and level with us? Because at level 8, when you get it, it's doing 2, 3, 4 damage. Brilliant. Perfect. So you do a little bit of extra damage on a mob which has maybe 100 hit points. It's brilliant. At level 30, and I put it on my weapons, I'm doing 2 damage again still, when my Fang of Agonok is proccing for 70s, and the spear from Lydra down in Madrun is proccing for 30s, and my poison is proccing for 2. So yeah, it's a shame. Can we please have a little bit more damage here? Now, this is all being said. I know I keep saying about damage. Now, we've had one of our guild mates wrote a little DPS meter, which incredibly clever, would scan all the combat log and pull out all the damage from the combat log and apply it to the person who it said did the damage. It's very, very clever and it's fantastic. I was just about beating Dire Lords for damage. Monks, wizards, warriors sometimes, we're like miles ahead of us. Rangers, miles ahead. So just all these little bits would just be really, really nice. If we do want to go an entire DPS orientation on our limited action set bars, just allow us to do that. And then we're missing out massively on crowd control. If we just go DPS, then we're not doing anything in crowd control. So it's allowed. The limited action set is really good for that, because you can't, it allows you that flexibility to say, okay, well, this is your maximum possibility. However, if you want to have a little bit of crowd control, you're going to lose a little bit of that maximum possibility. If you want to do a lot of crowd control, you're going to lose a lot of that possibility. At the moment, we are about 50% damage of a monk, which is crazy, and we have to work really, really hard for that. And we don't have a way. We have one way of losing aggro in a combat, in a fight, whereas monks can do it all the time, so they can drop aggro, lose aggro, and then kind of carry on, so they can just keep their DPS up. We've got to manage ours a little bit, just allow us to push up a little bit. We tend to join the fight late anyway, because I do, because like I say, I'm scanning, and we don't want to draw aggro too quickly, because we can't drop it, as it were. So just allow us to DPS a bit. Okay, caltrops, fantastic. The only thing that I have to say about this has been a really, really good change, where it's still affects the mob after they move out of the target reticle, which is fantastic. Affects them for 3 seconds. The fact that they stack is brilliant. So if you have a couple of rogues in here, as long as the mob doesn't resist the caltrops, then you can double caltrop them, which is fantastic. But like I say, the only thing about this is please just disable that target click cursor when we're wanting to place them. So yeah, it's fantastic. Great skill. And you get that, again, you get that really, really early. You get that at level 8 as well. So you get that really early to allow you to kind of practice and figure out what is happening with that. Corrosive Brew. It's usually always on my bar. It reduces armor class for 15% for 2 minutes. This isn't something, this is one of the best uses for opportunity that you can have. If you've got that perfect rotation where you're going into the fight with full opportunity, you're going to use this. You're then going to blackjack kick to go back up to full opportunity. You're going to get this in really early. Armor class is reduced by 15% right at the beginning. It's fantastic. It's usually on my bar. It's great. If it's getting greedy, but if the special effects, if the spell effect on this could get more impressive the more you level, it would be fantastic as well. So we want more special effects, actually. That's one thing. Rogues want more spell effects. Okay, ambidextrous. Right. This is very good. Piercing will increase haste by 5%. So this depends on what weapon you have in your offhand. So if you have a dagger in your offhand, you will then increase your haste by 5%, which is brilliant. If you have a slashing weapon in your offhand, it reduces the offhand damage penalty by 10%. So you get more damage from your offhand, which is great. The issue here is that when you have blunt grants offhand attacks a 5% chance to stun for 1 second. Now this just it doesn't work. The fact that piercing and slashing have an effect which lands, which works, so you always get this. I will always have 5% more haste. My slashing weapon in my offhand will always be doing more damage. A blunt weapon might maybe 1 time in 20 stun a mob for 1 second. I don't know how many times we hit in an average fight, but if we hit 40 times in an average fight, we might stun it twice. The blunt one here needs a tweak. I don't think piercing and slashing need to be changed at all. My haste is 44% at the moment. I think that's right. With 2 piercing weapons in there, which is great. Occasionally I've swapped to a slashing damage. Again, I haven't been able to play around with the DPS meter particularly, just to see which one benefits. If I've got a better slashing weapon than I have a piercing weapon, do I get a little bit more damage, and that overweighs the haste? The issue with the haste is that you just get readiness back so quickly, so you're just able to do all your skills when they kind of off their cooldown. The blunt just needs to be tweaked. I don't know whether having a blunt weapon in your offhand allows you to access blunt techniques might be quite interesting. So you can then drop in things like what the stun one is, the blunt stun when the mob is disorientated. That might be quite an interesting thing to do. But the blunt option in here needs to give you something that is active. It needs to allow something to happen rather than the chance for something to happen. That's the only change on this. You get this one at this is at level 10. This is one of our level 10 abilities, and level 10 you get quite a few things at level 10. It really kind of beefs you up, makes you feel really, really strong. Again, because there's not because we're still in testing and there's kind of a limited amount of drops. I haven't seen any blunt weapons which a rogue could use in the offhand that would make this really worth it. But I just think the blunt one just needs a little bit of thought on a different thing, a different bonus to give there. But yeah, otherwise, haste. Everybody loves haste, and yes, please, we'll have some more damage offhand as well. So yeah, it's great. Okay, smoke trick. Oh, I love smoke trick. It's absolutely fantastic. So yes, we get a mez. It mezzes the mob for 18 seconds. If it is disorientated, it is mezzed for 24 seconds, which is really, really good. That takes a lot of planning. So if a mob is coming in, trying to get somebody to disorientate a mob that is coming in so that we can mezz it for 24 seconds is quite tricky. I don't think I've ever managed to do it. I've never managed to get somebody to disorientate it so that we can mezz it for a little bit longer. The fact that it's a cooldown of 20 seconds I think is quite good, because it means that the mob is going to be unmezzed for 2 seconds. I do tend to, once I've mezzed it, I do tend to drop a trap so that it is then rooted. So when it is unmezzed, it is still rooted for a minute, and it just gives you that little bit of time. And these are also really useful for if you're pulling a lot of mobs in, and the rogues can mez one, the enchanter can mez another one, and then come back to yours and re-mez yours, and so that the duration lasts a little bit. This is fantastic. I don't think this needs to be changed at all. The cooldown's fantastic. The resists are pretty much spot on. I think it's very tricky to mez these shrieks, and I think these were orange to me when I started doing them, and I could just about mez most of them. I got a few resists, but kind of communication with the group, and I would drop a trap down and try and trap the mob while it was kind of running around. And if I couldn't trap it, then the cooldown would be back, and then I'd mez it again, which would be fine. Yeah, so this is one of the ways that rogues can crowd control. I do like the cooldown. Again, if you're in a group that's struggling with ads a little bit, you can pull yourself out of the fight and just keep one of them locked down, mez, and then when it breaks, you can mez it again. And then by that point, the main mob is usually down far enough so that you can go in there and help finish it off by the time the last mez is broken. So smoke trick, absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. Again, you get that at level 10. Yes, you get that at level 10. So just makes you feel really, really important as a rogue at level 10. Increases concealment rating by 10, improving the effectiveness of your stealth. I would love to know how stealth works in terms of, I know there's a lot of this in Pantheon, which is this improves your rating, but I don't know what rating impact it has. However, this is fantastic. With this at level 27, I think, 27, 28, with this on and the sneak food as well, I could sneak all the way around Hangor and find where the people were. I went on a massive exploration around Hangor with this. Like a Ghost is brilliant. It's really, really good because when you want to use it, you don't need anything else on your action set, so you can swap this one out really easily. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's one of those really, really good abilities which is really, really useful when you need it. And when you do need it, there's nothing competing for it on your limited action set. So yeah, it's really, really good. Shadowfall, right. Descend upon your enemy from above, dealing high physical damage. Must be above the target, requires stealth. So you have to be above your target. Now jumping does work on this, so you can hide behind your target, jump and hit Shadowfall, and it will work. One thing I haven't tried is whether being higher up does more damage. I don't think it does from memory. I've done a few of them from a cliff, and it's not seemed to do anymore. Now it has consistently done more than backstab. I just don't like it. I don't know where it would sit in a rotation for a rogue. If you want to open with this, then you are out of stealth, so you can't then go back into stealth and Sinister Strikes. It doesn't work on Sinister Strikes because it's not a technique, it's not a combat technique, so it doesn't improve its damage or anything. It's really cool because you get a little bit of it's a shadow step basically. So if you're above a mob and you click this, it will teleport you. So you shadow step in down and you just do a lot of damage. It's not attached to weapon damage, which I think is poor. I think it should be attached to weapon damage. It's not like you're falling on somebody. You are definitely kind of falling with the dagger out, or you should be. So I think it should be linked to weapon damage, and then it would scale a little bit better. But doing this as an opening, I don't know where it would then go. You then can't do Sinister Strikes unless you flash bomb back into stealth so that you can then open up Sinister Strikes again. It costs 3 opportunities, so you've then got no opportunity going into the fight. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I know I was in Dropper's stream when he was talking about it, and he was really excited about it, and it's cool. But it's only cool if you're fighting mobs which, I don't know, it's only cool if you're fighting mobs which, like, you jump down and you do, I think the highest one I've done is like 650 damage, something like that. Whereas my highest backstab was in the 900s. So I've done 650 damage on this, falling down onto a light blue deer or something, and then just finishing it off. But opening with this, it's not a good use of your resources. And I don't know how you would I don't know how you would alter this other than requires stealth and doesn't break stealth. If it didn't break stealth, would I use it more? Because you could open with it, Sinister Strikes when you were still in stealth, wait a little while, so that maybe Shadowfall, maybe if it didn't break stealth. So if you're in a group, you could open with this Sinister Strikes, but that's just bonus damage, which is great. Like, I like bonus damage. So maybe it just needs that. I was trying to think of a qualifier like this. If X, this won't break stealth, and I can't think of a qualifier. Yeah, I don't know. I 1 minute cooldown is fine. 3 opportunity is really high. It just leaves you really low of resources going into the fight, and you don't really want that. So Shadowfall, yes, it's cool. It's kind of like Shadow Step. Shadow Step is cool when you get it, and I've used it a little bit. The fact that it keeps your orientation, and we'll get to Shadow Step. Shadowfall, I think it just needs a little bit of a tweak somewhere. I think requires stealth, doesn't break stealth when you hit, might be the way to do it. And I think if you miss, maybe if you miss it breaks stealth. I don't know. I think if this one maybe gave you a chance, even just a chance, if it gave you 50% chance to stay in stealth if you hit, maybe that's how you fix it. But yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Now, Flash Bomb. Flash Bomb's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So it stuns everybody that is around you for 3 seconds, which is really good. It blinds them for 15 seconds and reduces their accuracy by 30%. It's absolutely brilliant. The one thing I would like on this one would be a little bit of a lower cooldown. Like a minute would probably be a bit too much. 1.5 minutes would probably be fine. It's just this one that it's always just out of reach when you need it because you've used it on something else. And I like using this in long fights as well. So if you're so for instance when we're doing Aganoct or when we're doing like the Crystal Dragon or anything like that, if you can use this in the middle of the fight to put you back into Shadow Walk to then Sinister Strikes and come out with another backstab. That's one of the ways I use it. And then obviously it's really, really useful to stun the mobs as well, like the Shriek that we have in the background here. The group has to have a little stun rotation going on to make sure that the Shriek doesn't life tap its way all the way back up again. So Flash Bomb's fantastic. Maybe just a little bit of a drop in cooldown. Because 2 minutes is just at the point. Cooldowns are an interesting conversation, I think. I think 2 minutes is just at the point where cooldowns become impactful. So I don't think it needs much. I think 1 minute 30 would probably be fine. Love this skill. It's absolutely fantastic. We'll talk a little bit more about cooldowns later on. Oh, right. Okay. Unstable Mixture. I don't think... so this was changed in the last season where it didn't cause the enemy to flee in fear. It caused them to... I can't remember what it did, but it was something... It did something differently. This is utterly useless because you use it for the possibility that you might reduce the enemy's dodge chance, or it might increase your crit chance, or it reduces your cooldown, or it makes the mob run away in the middle of a dungeon and go and get its mates. It's terrible. We used it in the manor at level... What level do you get this one? You get this one at level 12. So we used this one in the manor at level 12 for the first time we got it. Mob ran away, went and got its mates. Like, why would we ever use this again? And then last season it got changed, and I forget what the change was, but it caused the enemy to cower in fear for 5 seconds. I think it was something like that. Anyway, it didn't run away, and at that point we're like, okay, yeah. And it's also 2 opportunity. You're using 2 opportunity to maybe do something. It's It doesn't work. It's not good. Causing a mob to run off and get its mates in the middle of the goblin caves is not good. The cooldown's fine. The fact that you can do it from 15 meters away is fine. 2 opportunities is way too high for something that might happen, and one of those mights is a really bad thing. This, unfortunately, has never made its way back onto my bar since they changed it back to Flee in Fear. With the, I think it was Cower. I think it was like, it just like cowered in fear and stopped hitting you for 5 seconds or something. It was something like that. But that change, it did make its way onto my bar a little bit. One thing on this one would be really, really useful. It needs, when you hover over it, it needs to show you what's happening a little bit more readily. It needs to show you what the effect has been. Because, for instance, if my crit chance has just gone up, I want to hit backstab. So I want to make sure I'm hitting backstab. I want to make sure I'm hitting my highest damage one to make sure I'm critting and getting more damage as best I can. If he's dodging more, then I don't really mind about that because I'm attacking from the back. So that doesn't affect what I'm going to be doing. But this is one of those things that just needs a bit more feedback. I need some more information once it's landed. To let me know what's happened, even if that's in the floating text. So yeah, just let us know about that one rather than having to go and scroll down and have a look on the debuff, at which point the debuff has run out because it's only 10 seconds and I've not been able to do anything. So yeah, this is not good, unfortunately. Evasive maneuvers. Okay. This is a passive, so it's a passive utility. So this one has to be on my bar, and I will use it. To be honest, I've never used it. It's never really made it on my bar because at the point at which I am getting hit, I'm not doing my job properly as a rogue, so maybe it would be. It wouldn't even be useful when I'm soloing because I don't want to be below 20% health when I'm soloing either. Whether this one gets moved to one of those traits a little bit more, that would be quite interesting. I think this would be more useful as just an innate passive. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it gives you anything. I just think as an innate passive that when a rogue drops below 20 health, we dodge a lot and we can hit a lot quicker. I think just as an innate passive, this would be fine. As a passive utility, it just sadly it never makes its way onto the utility bar. Our utilities, especially when you get Featherfall from Winged Feather, our utility bar is incredibly packed. And my utility bar does move around a lot. I do swap things out in and out of that an awful lot. I think the only things that stay on there are Ambidextrous, Sinister Strikes, and Springwire Trap, and Flash Bomb. So yeah, we've got 4. We have 2 spots that we can sometimes swap things out for. So yeah, it's tricky. I don't think I use this very often. It just needs a tweak. I think this would just be fine as an innate passive. Something that always happens. Stick it down as a trait if you want to. Those little runes that we get. I think that's fine. I don't think that would be overpowered at all. This is amazing. Consume 1 opportunity to grant yourself 500 readiness. Now, it's 30-second cooldown, which is fine. This very, very often works its way onto my bar. If I'm in a really good group where I'm able to push my DPS, where I'm needed to just kind of take those first few seconds at the beginning of the fight just to make sure that we haven't got an ad, hit Sinister Strikes, build my opportunity, and I'm going into the fight with Sinister Strikes live and my full opportunity because I'm being stuck stealth. This is fantastic because I'm using opportunity to drop in Bloodletter. I'm using opportunity to drop in the Corrosive Brew. I'm topping it back up again with Blackjack Kick. I've then got 4 opportunity. I've thrown out all my all my combat abilities, my backstabs, my shivs. I can then tick this, tap it up again, so that I'm able to use more of those little things. So I can throw out twin fangs, for instance, and it just keeps my readiness full. So after you've kind of gone through your first rotation, everything is still already full. It's fantastic. I love this one. It's a really clever. It's a really clever little ability for resource generation and resource kind of swapping. So yes, if you are doing certain kind of rotations, you're maybe not using opportunity as much as you. Well, maybe you're not using opportunity as much as you are readiness. I think this is fantastic. So yeah, there's usually full opportunity, and if the fight is long enough for you to be able to Sinister Strikes again, then yeah, you've just got opportunity coming out of your ears. It's brilliant. Flash Trap. This is actually really interesting, and it's very useful. So when you're trying to pull rooms and you know you're going to need to mez mobs, this is really useful. So you can put this one. So you can put the root traps closer to the room that you're pulling. You can then put the flash traps behind those, so nearer you. So you put the root traps the furthest away. You put the flash traps here. So the mobs are going to come in. They're going to get rooted first. More are going to come past. 2 more are going to get flash trapped, and then the rest are going to come. So the 2 that are flash trapped gives you 10 seconds of time for the enchanter, who is hopefully in the group as well, to mez those 2. While you can then kind of tick out and off tank 1 of the extra ones. So this is if you're pulling like a room of 6 mobs, it's going to be really good fun in things like Halnir's Cave maybe, or Black Rose Keep, when I know there's lots of mobs around. It's really useful in Mad Run when we were first trying to break into Mad Run. So yeah, Flash Trap. It's one of those things that makes the enchanter's life easier, because the enchanters don't want to get hit. The mobs coming at them, they're trying to mez them. Maybe the mez gets resisted or whatever, but they don't want to get hit. So things like this, that gives them that split second just to go, okay, I'm going to mez that one, then I'm going to mez that one. Okay, now we're all like locked down. It's really useful, really helpful. It's fantastic, fantastic trap. So again, it's one of those really good, useful traps, and it's a good use for a trap. Any more traps like this, just keep throwing us traps, keep throwing us poisons. We love it. It's fantastic. Shadow planning. Oh. Okay. Carefully plan your next attack from the shadows, increasing your physical crit chance by 10% for 5 seconds. Requires stealth. This has a 5-second cast time. So I could cast this for a chance that I crit. Or I could backstab, shiv, auto attack, and twin fangs. So that would be roughly, I don't know, let's just say we've done it on the high end. So we've got a 700 point backstab. We've got a actually, let's not crit the backstab. So something like a 300 point backstab, a 200 point shiv, and twin fangs have gone in. So we've just done 800 points of damage. Or we could cast this for 5 seconds at the beginning of the fight, bearing in mind that it requires stealth, and it costs an opportunity as well. So if we do cast it, we're not going to have full opportunity to then cast Sinister Strikes. It just never gets used. It's sadly the one. It's one of our abilities that does not synchronize and synergize with anything else in our toolkit. So here we go. So we could cast this at the beginning. So we're stealthed. We've got full opportunity. We've got full readiness. Sinister Strikes is going to use all 4 of our opportunity to do 60% more damage on our next attack, or our next 2 attacks if we're stealth. So we go in. We hit Shadow Planning. We've now got 5 seconds to be able to do this. We have to wait another 2 seconds to get our opportunity back so that we can then hit Sinister Strikes. So we've got all of those done. We're then going to go in and we're going to hit Backstab. so that we maybe get a crit on that backstab. Bearing in mind that my crit chance is already at like 50%. I would rather than trying to get all those keybinds down in that perfect order, and it's got to be absolutely bang on because you've only got this for 5 seconds. And it takes, I don't know if any of you has played a rogue, it's actually quite difficult to get behind the mob at the right point at the beginning of the fight as well, because the mob is kind of, that's when the taunt and the aggro is just kind of changing a little bit and the mob's turning around a lot. So this it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. How would I change it? Guaranteed crit for 30 seconds. I don't know. Crit maybe. So shadow planning. If you are auto attacking out of stealth, your auto attacks crit for the next 5 seconds. There you go. And remove the cast time. Like, you don't need a cast time on it. Maybe remove the cast time down to half a second or 1 second, something like that. It just doesn't work for a possibility that maybe you'll crit to do all that work. It's a miss, sadly, that one. This, however, let's have a little bit of water. Fan of Knives is amazing. It's fantastic. It was iconic in Mad Run. I have a screenshot of me doing damage to about 25 spiders at once, which is really tricky to do because spiders are all at different levels. So that's an interesting thing. So this only applies on a flat plane. So if some things are up on a hump, it doesn't do 150 weapon damage. All enemies within 4 meters in a sphere. It does it in a flat circle. Whether Visual Realms can change that to a sphere, so it does do things and make sure it hits things up on slightly higher levels, I don't know. However, as long as you're not fighting mobs which need to be mezzed, this is always on my bar because it's free damage. It's free. Every 30 seconds, it is free 150% weapon damage on that mob that you're killing, because it doesn't cost anything. It does 150 damage. The only issue is that if you're fighting mobs and you are kind of off tanking or one is mezzed, then you don't want to be breaking mez with this. One little thing about this: can we please have a spell effect for it, please? Can we just like just throw out a load of knives? That would be fantastic. Thank you very, very much. It's brilliant. I love Fan of Knives. It's fantastic. Escape Artist, right? So this is the point at which we start talking about cooldowns. Escape Artist is amazing. Throw a smoke bomb at your feet, automatically activating Shadow Walk for 5 seconds. Okay, so you're not vanished. You're only vanished for 5 seconds. It immediately ends combat and causes enemies to forget about you. After 5 seconds, Shadow Walk effect will end. Shadow Walk must be memorized to activate Escape Artist. That's fine, because so this needs a little bit of a change. That's never not going to happen anymore because Shadow Walk is now a stance, which is always up. So that can just get removed. Now, it costs 3 opportunity, which is fine. It costs a lot. It does a lot of cool stuff. It takes 1/8 of a second to cast, which is okay, fine. Why not a half a second, or why not a second? I don't know. A second's a long time, so I kind of get that. 1/8 of a second is just messing with my OCD a little bit. And the global cooldown is 1 second. Now, the cooldown is 5 minutes. This is an amazing ability, and I don't want it to compete with Feign Death for the monks. However, I think if this was dropped to 2-minute cooldown, because at the moment a 5-minute cooldown may as well be a 3-minute cooldown, because 5 minutes and 3 minutes effectively in an MMO game where you're fighting mobs, you're pulling in a mob, you're killing a mob, maybe takes you a minute. A 5-minute cooldown may as well be a 3-minute cooldown. Once you get to a 3-minute cooldown, it starts to become interesting, and if you make the skill interesting, if you bring it to a 2-minute cooldown, it makes the skill really interesting. In terms of, I could sort of pull with this, and I've tried this. I've tried doing, and I know this is kind of flexing in a different direction, but it's not even remotely competing with monks. However, if monks are pulling and feign deathing, then we can kind of go in and pull off. And I know there's kind of, I think it's a bug where you kind of feign deathing, the mobs are returning back to their spawn point, and you can pull them off kind of freely. But I think being able to kind of use this a little bit more often, even in a long fight when you're wanting to drop aggro, because our DPS maybe gets a little bit high or something. Please, yes, allow our DPS to get a little bit high. But being able to use this in a long fight to drop aggro, go back into stealth again, charge back up, and then come back out of stealth with your backstab, which is hopefully always critting coming out of stealth, something like that. I think this would be really, really good. This is a fantastic skill. The cooldown is just way too long. 5 minutes takes it out of the game. 5 minutes takes the skill out of any possible rotation, any reason that you would have it on your bar. I have had this on my bar for the chance of occasionally doing something epic in a game, in a group. So being able to drop out of combat, go back into stealth, throw a mez or something at an ad that's just coming in. It's really, really useful. 5 minutes cooldown literally just take it out of the game. Drop that down. I think 2 minutes. If you were to drop the smoke flash bomb, if you were to drop flash bomb down to 1.5 minutes, and maybe drop this down to 2.5 minutes, or maybe 2 minutes, I think that would give us a really, really interesting little combination that we could kind of play around with a little bit more consistently. And I don't think it would be overpowered. I don't think it would be too much. I think it would be a really fun extra ability that we would be able to make use of more regularly, and I think it would give us an additional reason to put this into our lovely limited accent set. I love this skill. Cooldown needs to be much less. And also it doesn't need that line. Shadow Walk must be memorized to activate Escape Artist. It's not relevant anymore because Shadow Walk is always up. Okay. Wall Climber. How many times I have caught people out who are following me climbing, and then they fall off because I haven't stopped and I've just gone all the way up to the wall, all the way up to the top of the cliff, and they've not been able to make it. And they're like, "Oh, how have you done that?" Because of Wall Climber. Wall Climber's fantastic. Reduces the rate of endurance drains by 10% and gives you more endurance. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. I think this is great. I think this is hopefully going to be a precursor to safe fall as well, so we take a little less damage when we're falling. No notes. It's brilliant. It's really, really fun. And never ever ever follow a rogue when you're climbing. Many people in my guild have learned that lesson. It's great. Shadow Step. This is fun. Now, it steps through the shadows to a location that you click. So once you activate this, you get a very, very small little green selection, if you like, cursor on the floor, in the same way that you get the big green selection cursor when you're placing your trap. Now, I would like it to be like a bit of a pointy arrow, just something a little bit more vertical so that you can see, particularly on this, because the tiny little green circle, A, is very small, and B, in grass you can't see it. So it would be really nice if this had a vertical element. I know the traps have a little bit of a vertical element because they have the trap bit, so you can sort of see where the trap is going to be placed. This is very, very easy not to be able to see, and in fact, the first time I clicked this, I was like, well, I don't know what to do, because I couldn't see the little cursor that popped up. This would also be one of those ones where it would be really, really useful if it would deactivate the click cursor, so that you're not accidentally clicking your target or clicking on a different target or anything like that. And also, one other little thing about this: if you click on a mob, it teleports you directly to the mob. If you do click on a mob, I don't know whether this is possible or not. If it could orientate you to be facing the mob as well, so that you could then go in and backstab, that would be amazing. Because at the moment, when you click on the mob, it just teleports you there, and generally you are facing out away from it, because you've turned around, you've found the mob, you've clicked on it, and you've gone into the combat, and it's put you behind the mob, and it's facing you around. So then you've got to turn around and then backstab. So if when you click on a target to teleport behind them, it could orientate you to be facing the target, that would be amazing. Whether you can code that, I don't know, Visual Realms. I would love it if you could. But I do like Shadow Step. It has occasionally turned up on my bar. Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely one of those skills that I like having. Just a little bit of kind of, what's the word? Quality of life, if you like. So if we could have a little bit of a vertical marker when we're moving it so that we can see, and also if we can orientate so that we're facing the mob when we do click on the mob to teleport to, then that would also be great as well. Just so that you know as well, you can, when you're doing this, you can click on the floor, so you don't have to go behind the mob. You can click on the floor and it will just teleport you 25 meters, which is great. So yeah, brilliant. I love the ability. First time I got it, I was just teleporting around. I was just teleporting around the fort for ages. Really cool. Sprint to the shadows. Embarrassingly, I haven't really used this very often. I think this is one of those ones which has so many if. Like if your name is James on a Tuesday in March, then you might be able to do this. So it's good. I think it's a really, really good ability to have on our skill set. I think it's really useful. It's obviously going to be a very situational skill, which is also fine. I love situational skills. The downside to this is that it is linked to Escape Artist, so it's got innately it has a 5-minute cooldown, not a 5-second cooldown. It's got a 5-minute cooldown because Escape Artist has to be not on cooldown. So if you've clicked this, then you can't use it again for 5 minutes, which I think is a shame. Whether this could work, so it increases your sprint speed by 25% for 6 seconds, and then you kind of vanish. Yeah, so you're running away, and then you're dropping aggro, which is fine. If you could run away and drop aggro every 2 minutes, maybe this needs to be the 5-minute cooldown, and Escape Artist needs to be 2-minute cooldown. When used this way, Escape Artist cooldown time will be increased by 50%. Yeah, I think this needs to be the 5-minute cooldown, and Escape Artist needs to be a 2-minute cooldown. I think that, this is like a, oh shit, everything's gone to hell, we need to get out of here, or I need to save myself. I need to be able to drag out all my friends' corpses. So if you're in that sort of dungeon, then maybe you have to have this up on your bar. Yeah, maybe it's that one. And then this one needs the 5-minute cooldown. I think that would probably be the way I'd go with that. So I'd make Escape Artist 2 minutes, or 1.5, probably 2. Make it 2 minutes, and then this is the 5-minute cooldown. I think that's probably a better way of doing it. And that is the last ability. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed running the rogue. I'm gonna roll the rogue again when the server wipe happens. I also have a ranger, a summoner, a dire lord, and I'll probably roll the wizard again. And I'll kind of try all of those, but I think the rogue is just so much fun, and like I say, it's got so much flexibility, and all the abilities are so fleshed out, and pushes the character and the class in just little different directions every time you get a new ability. It's fantastic. I would just really like our damage to be higher. And now I understand that piercing weapons don't tend to have high damage. That's fine. You just need to make backstab, which is our piercing ability, have higher damage. A dagger tends to be less damage than a slashing sword, so backstab should do higher percent damage over waylay, for instance. So maybe the backstab should be 300% and waylay should be 250% to kind of balance that out. Yeah, I think how we deliver our damage is interesting. Is it going to be kind of like consistent? I think it should be peaked. I think we should have the ability just to unload and just like throw in like spike damage, really high spike damage, which is why I really like the idea of backstabbing critting coming out of Shadow Walk. I think that would be really good. Yeah, that's my thoughts. I hope this is of use to everybody at Visual Realms, and also any of the rogues out here. I hope you enjoyed watching that. Hopefully I will see you at the end of this season and going into season 2, chapter 2, season 2. So thanks very much, everybody. Look me up on Twitch if you like. It's Chris Frossin on Twitch, and obviously you can find me on Pantheon. It's the rogue is Sarlor. So I'll see you later. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.